we could only like dream. We're just like, okay,
I know.
This is what the life is, right?
This is what the life is. Have we made the life yet?
Have we done that? I think we've redefined it.
We've redefined
Redefined
How have we redefined the life?
Because I think it's less, I think for us millennials, it's like less about the image and more about like the authenticity of like,
Yeah.
if you're passionate about it, if it's truly hitting like those moral goals that you set for yourself. And I think that comes into play with like sustainability conversations as well. Like, how aligned is your firm with your sustainability goals? Or if your firm's talking about things that are important to you, like neurodiversity and inclusion, and less about like just the image. Like, that's what I kind of feel like.
I know. That's true.
Yeah.
The authenticity is real. It has to be like built in.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we were both Purdue grads,
Yeah.
which I love.
I know.
So, and you still work with the students. So I want to know about like, what is different that they are concerned about? Like, what are you seeing in the students that's different than maybe 10, 15 years ago?
I mean, I think it is that moral alignment. I was at a Metropolis Leadership and Sustainability Summit yesterday, and we were talking about this. Like, okay, how, do we connect with the students? Like, what do they need to know versus like young designers in a firm? And what we kind of talked about is we had a lot of information coming towards us when we were in school, of course. But that information is coming so much faster and so much more intensely to them now. So it's really kind of helping them like sift through that data and understand like, okay, what's important. And when we talked about greenwashing when we were younger, right? When we were in school, like, oh, just make sure there's no greenwashing and whatnot. But now like there's so much of that. And then like layering in AI on top of it. And it's like, okay, what's the real story? Like, what do you need to follow up with the reps about? What do you need to like really dig in deeper? Knowing who your trusted reps are and like leaning on them, teaching them how to build those relationships is super important because I rely on them heavily as a designer. And that's not something that's really taught in school.
Yeah.
But if we can get to them at that level of like teaching them how to build relationships and understanding that rep, dealer, furniture, manufacturer world, because it get a little convoluted if you don't understand it. And just like helping them deal with that. And then also just understanding like who are they as a person so that they can align themselves with a brand or a company. And then so it feels more authentic to them and like getting back to that conversation we were having.
Yeah. And it's almost like critical thinking too, of like looking at all the things that are coming at you and like what is real, but weeding through it and figuring out what truly matters and what aligns.
Yeah. And it's hard, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's hard for us.
It's hard for us. Like, you imagine somebody who has like less years of experience and sifting through that, right?
Yeah.
And now like the rules are kind of being taken away. And it's like, what is important? And because if you just like look at social media or, AI or whatever, everything seems important. So it's like, how do you triage that?
You're right.
And
we don't have the capacity in our brains to truly understand everything, every issue, every problem.
100%.
But we still have to be able to decipher through. And it feels like if we're not experts in everything, we're failing.
Correct.
And so that's hard to navigate.
It's super hard to navigate. Someone was saying, but in the end, people care about people. And I was like, boom, that's it. Like, if we can narrow it down to that, like people care about people. People care about how the spaces they're designing impact other people, impact people who are neurodivergent, or impact the environment. And that affects people who are living in the areas that are being forested or the workers who are working with, courts and all this stuff, So I just thought, okay, like boiling it down, if you're trying to just like really connect on like one thing, it's like, people care about people.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's beautiful.
Yeah. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
No, you're so right. Because even design as a career, as a profession, that is what we're designing for is people and feelings and experience. And that has to be at the forefront.
Yeah.
And you brought up neurodiversity a few times. So I want to get into that. But how did you become interested in neuroinclusive design, neurodiversity? Where did that come from?
So it actually started when I started at HOK. So HOK has started doing their research and, getting grants to learn more and study more about neuroinclusive design about 10 years ago now. I joined HOK almost 5 years ago, and I just kind of get geeked out about certain things. And I was being taught about this because it was coming out of the interior studio. And I was just like, wow, I had never heard it put that way
Yeah.
before, and never heard it like explained in the way that we were talking about it. And especially in how like the space really impacts
Mm.
people either, negatively or positively. I just like it just like clicked and I
Mm.
was just hooked and I was like, okay, I want to learn more. I want to be more involved. I want to do more. And Kay Sargent, who is our director
Yeah.
of thought leadership, thankfully was like, okay, you have that curiosity, let's go. And she really just kind of took me under her wing and just like as much information as I wanted, she was like, okay, here you go. Here's more. And
Fantastic.
I just like ate it up.
So what did that work actually look like on the day-to-day for you?
So in practice, we kind of boil it down to three principles. And so these are the things that when I'm giving presentations to students too, I'm just like, okay, if you don't remember anything I tell you, just remember these three things.
Love that.
And, it's yeah,
Simplicity.
simplicity, like, let's just strip it down, right? So, if you inject your space with, variety, choice, and control,
Okay.
you're most of the way there. Because a
Oh.
lot of the things we're doing and a lot of things people do, innately support this and
Mhm.
support neuroinclusive design, but they don't know how to message it to explain to their client that it's benefiting them,
Right,
right?
right.
And so if you're able to just kind of introduce those three things and whenever you're thinking about a space, you're like, okay, how does this support variety? How does this support choice? And how does this support control? Because that control piece is something that's like we take activity-based design, for
Yeah.
example. And like that is so great, right? But there's sometimes a lot of lack of control in that environment.
Mhm.
Like you can't control the lights, you can't control the temperature, you can't control how much noise, is around you, right? Unless you physically move yourself.
Right.
And even like some areas that maybe have higher sound masking or some areas you don't want sound masking, right?
Yeah.
Because having a space devoid of sound is also like really creepy. So you
Yeah,
have
I
to have the
agree, yeah.
yeah, you have to have the right balance. And so being able to just kind of weave those kind of thoughts into your spaces, that's key. And then if we take it to that next level, then I like to think about the two most impactful stimuli.
Okay.
And we've learned about the senses since we were in kindergarten, right? So we have five senses:
Uh,
taste, smell, touch, hearing, and sight,
yeah.
right? But there's also 3 other ones. So there's interoceptive, proprioceptive, and vestibular. So the interoceptive is like how you feel within your body. So like right now, if we have not had breakfast and we're
No
also
coffee.
craving our coffee, we're like, okay, that's like an internal sensation that's maybe distracting us,
Yeah.
right? And then proprioceptive and is how my body feels in relationship to other objects or people or things, right? And then vestibular has to deal with your balance and that sort of thing. So thinking about that expanded spectrum of senses and what are the most impactful? And we know that the 3 most impactful are sound, sight, and like your interoceptive
Mhm.
sensations. So
Okay.
and that shows up in temperature control,
Yeah.
basically. So thermal comfort.
Yes.
And if you talk to anyone in facilities, those are the three complaints they always get. Oh, this place is too loud.
Yeah.
These lights are too bright.
Yeah, it's too
Or it's
cold
too
in here.
cold in
It's too
here. It's too
hot.
hot.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you think about that. And so people in their facilities are like, heck yeah, I deal with that all the time. Like I get it.
Yeah.
But the ones that I focus on specifically are like acoustics and lighting. So
Yeah.
because those affect
In an interior environment,
interior
you can
environment.
control
Yeah.
those.
So those are the 2 I focus on the
Okay.
most, and of course, all of them are important, but if we're thinking about a budget and we're thinking about triaging,
Yeah.
what we can get into a project and what's the most impactful, those are the 2 I focus on the most.
Love that.
Yeah.
So I often think about like when you have these big topics that are super common, everyone's talking about neuroinclusive design, everyone talked about sustainability for the last 20 years. There's this greenwashing, like you mentioned, like the diluting of what is actually sustainable. Is
Mhm.
there a greenwashing version of neuroinclusive design, or is because variety matters, a lot of things fall under this category? Like, I'm just curious,
Yeah.
are people trying to dilute the value of neuroinclusive design?
I think that's a really great question, and I think, I don't think people do it out of malice,
Mhm.
like, I think they are trying to be a part of the conversation, they want to support what's happening, right? I think it's just how it's messaged maybe, or what research is
Hmm.
behind the decisions that are made.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of valid conversation around, like, let's let's talk about flooring for a second, right? Because people who are neurodivergent tend to avoid eye contact, so they look at the floor. And so what's on your floor can be a really great canvas to move people through a space.
Mm.
So that can be done in a variety of different
Right.
ways. It can be done, you know, in a good way and sometimes in a bad way. But if those flooring manufacturers are educated on how to help the designers inform their clients
Yeah.
on what kind of patterns or textures are better received for maybe areas that you want lower stimulation,
Mhm.
or some that you want to amp it up, right? And higher stimulation. Same with furniture with what you guys are
Yeah.
doing. So I don't think anything that's, being washed in a way. I don't think any of it's intentional. I think when you're looking at products and you're talking to manufacturers as a designer, just get curious about the research, right? I mean, that's
For
the same
sure.
thing I did with you all. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are talking about this too. I get so jazzed about it. I was like, what's your
Let's
research?
talk.
Let's talk
Yeah,
about
let's
it. Like, I want
talk.
to, I want to do more. And my local rep, Kylie, thankfully, connected me with you. She's like, oh, well, you have to talk to Maria, you know?
Yeah.
And and that was great. And then we got to have a conversation about, okay, like, what are you doing? What are you seeing? Why are you, doing these new furniture lines that align with, these kind of
Mhm.
principles? And then it kinda just all comes together,
Yeah.
and you want to help understand and, like, peel away the onion of, like, okay, you guys are doing this because you care, and this is how you're messaging it. I felt like it was really approachable in the messaging, and I think that's great, right?
Love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, there's so many facets to it too, because it's not
Mhm.
just furniture, it's not just flooring, it's not just
Mhm.
lighting.
Exactly.
It's
It's
also,
an
how you
ecosystem.
relate to people
Yeah.
too and how you have a conversation. Yeah,
Yeah.
ecosystem. That's a
Mhm.
perfect word.
Yeah.
How all the parts move together. No, that's
Exactly.
beautiful.
And they all support each other, right? Because you can't
Yeah.
have one without another, and I think
Yes.
that's, like, what's so important about it.
Yes. And then you've also done neuroinclusive design in the justice market too.
Mhm.
So talk
Yeah.
to me about how that's
Oh
different
my
because I
gosh.
can't even
It
imagine.
is so impactful. So in 2023, um, we decided to really push this portion of thought leadership in neuro-inclusive design into all of our vertical markets,
Okay.
because it started in our workplace studio.
Mhm.
And then in 2023, we're like, okay, let's get this out to all the other ones. We really are like, we made a hard push at it.
Yeah.
And one of the vertical markets that I was kind of put in charge of, or, you know, moved into,
Yeah.
was justice. And for us, that could be behavioral health. It could be detention centers. It could be courthouses, government admin buildings, anything that falls into that category. And at first, to be honest with you, I was like, "Oh man, like I don't want to do that."
Yeah.
I just had some like moral feelings about
Right.
that. But then I was like, I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing some research and, look into, okay, how are they handling this in Europe?
Mhm.
How are they handling this in other
Yeah.
countries? Like, what are we doing here? What kind of makes sense? What doesn't? And then I was like, wow, we are putting people in gray boxes with
Mhm.
all hard surfaces. We just talked about how sound is very impactful.
Yeah.
Sound is just bouncing around
Yeah.
everywhere.
Fluorescent light.
Fluorescent lights that are flickering, that are, have bad light quality, then no daylight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're expecting people to rehabilitate in that environment.
No, that's
I was like, that is
terrible.
absolutely the opposite,
Yeah.
right? The prison population they do have a high percentage of people who are neurodivergent. And so it just, again, I had that like click moment,
Mhm.
right? And I was like, no, this is actually the vertical market that I can make the most impact in.
Yeah.
And then I got real jazzed and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let's go,
I love that.
let's do it. And so what I started doing in my designs, because there are a lot of restrictions, right? And rightly
Right. Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And you all are in the behavioral health market too, so
Mhm.
you know how this is
Mhm.
too. And so you want people to be safe. That's
Yes.
utmost importance,
Yes.
right? Safety first, for sure.
Absolutely.
But then you learning how to layer in some of these other principles, right? So biophilia really helps a lot with that. So anything that we could do, like, that's high up that
Yeah.
you can't get to, right? Can't touch. If you do like micro perforated, like wood ceilings, for example, and can like help absorb that sound. So you're getting a connection to to nature there,
Yeah.
and like another
Yeah.
nature point.
Yeah.
You're helping with acoustics, and you're giving some visual interest. Well, there's 3 things right there that you're reaching back to
Yeah.
your concept about. And there's this one project I was working on in Ohio, a small county detention center. And I was talking to the sheriff about neuroinclusive design, and I was like, this is why it's important. This is why HOK thinks it's important. And this is how it relates to you. Your inmates, will be less agitated,
Mm.
which then makes it easier for the people guarding them who are
Yeah.
working directly for
Yeah.
you to do it's
Wow.
easier to do their job then. And he was like, I have such a hard time recruiting people.
I
And
believe it.
it's like,
Yeah.
absolutely, of course you do. And then so once he understood that, it was gonna be better, not just for the inmates, but then for his people, and he was
Mhm.
very fiercely protective of his people, which I loved.
Love that.
Then he was like, "Yeah, we're on it." And so we had a whole, as every project does, a VE
Yeah. Of course.
exercise, of course.
Surprise.
Surprise. But anything that we were able to say, "Okay, it gets back to our, project principles.
Uh-huh.
This is why, and these are all the things that the boxes it checks," we pushed that through. So all the acoustics things, we were able to get through,
Wow.
which was, like, a huge win for me because I
Yeah.
was like, "This is amazing," because we also then were able to use some of the things to, like, introduce color, and that would introduce wayfinding, so you get some of that variety. And we just, even within, like, the housing units, we had different areas to, like, try to normalize, that, movement through your day.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, like, one big concrete area, right? Like, you had different sections, like, where you're watching TV, then this is where you could, have that gameplay or eat, or this is where you would go to learn, because they had, like, multi-purpose rooms. So
Mhm.
you can have that learning component and kind of move through your day in a more normative way, to just help support that, like,
Yeah. Well,
rehabilitation.
back to
Yeah.
people, designing for people, people helping people of all the vertical markets. I mean, justice is one that really needs that people touch because you really
100%.
do need to support and heal and care for the
Exactly.
people there.
Exactly.
Man,
Yeah.
what do you wish people understood about that work that you do or any of the work you
Any of the
do in
work?
neuroinclusive design?
Yeah. I think that sometimes these concepts, because you're, talking about them at, like, high levels, and it
Mhm.
sounds very, like, abstract sometimes. I think I just would like people to know that, like, you can make a difference. Like, as a
Mm.
designer, as working for a furniture manufacturer, like, your decisions on a daily basis, and, like, what you put in, like, furniture decisions you make, what architectural finish decisions you make, what spatial decisions you make, all of that matters,
I
and it
love
makes an
that.
impact.
Yes.
I think that's really
Oh,
what
you're
boils
so
down
right.
to.
You're right. It really does matter
Mhm.
because yes, it is abstract, but there's things that we can do today,
Yeah.
to make an environment more appealing or
Yeah.
welcoming or inviting or communicate what people can change about a
Yes.
space.
Even if, there's a junior designer that's gonna be listening to this, and they think, "Oh, well, I don't make any decisions. I just
Yeah.
do what I'm told." And it's like, you might, but you also have a lot of control over that, because at least, where I come from, like, those junior designers, they're working really hard. They're starting the palettes that, I feel like,
Mhm.
okay, this is the direction, this is kind of the concept, pull a palette first. Like, so they're making that initial
Yeah.
decision. And if they're really informed on what some of those materials and textures and colors mean
Yeah.
to a person's brain, then that's huge.
Yes.
And they are making a difference.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, we developed this card deck of questions. It's just really fun design
Yeah.
questions about design, purpose, career, growth. And I would love if you would pick a card and answer the question on the card. Are
Okay.
you up for that?
I'm up for it. This is
I love
exciting.
it. Okay. I'm not even going to tell you what all the colors mean. I'm just going to, you
Oh,
just
I
get
didn't
to
even know
pick.
there
They're
was,
each
okay.
categorized.
All right,
You're feeling pink
I'm
today?
feeling pink
I like
today.
it. Good for
Yeah,
you.
people category.
Okay.
How do you build trust with the people you design for?
Ooh.
That's great. Oh my gosh, okay, I love that. So I do interact with clients a lot. I love the client interaction. I think we build trust in a few ways. One, first and foremost, is listening to what they need,
Mhm.
and not pushing what you feel is best on them, just, like, off the bat. And so listening to them, and then relating what you think should be done in the design back to how they talk about themselves as an organization,
Yeah.
as like the people, and then really understanding and showing them that you can understand where they're coming from, right?
Yeah. Empathy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's number one. And then also building trust through education.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're hiring a design firm for that knowledge base, right? And so being able to understand what's important for them and then messaging it in a way that makes sense for their organization
Right.
is huge.
Right.
And a lot of, especially when you get to thought leadership concepts, like a lot of it is education, right? And we talk about this every day, but not everyone does.
Yeah.
So being able to message that back. And I think, through those two lenses, you're able to really start that relationship
For sure.
with them.
And the research you're doing and the neuroinclusive design books, all of that helps to build the trust that you need in customers and clients.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should we do another one?
One more.
Okay, I'll do a different color.
Do a different color.
All right.
Which category is that?
Career.
Okay.
It says, what gets you most excited about your work right now? Okay. Well, as a product of the recession. Right? We talked about that.
Yes.
So, I did not graduate where I wanted to be, right? In fact, it took me 5 years to get into a design firm where I thought was the pinnacle of where I want to be.
Right.
But in that 5 years, I took what I call as the scenic route, and I worked in facilities.
I like that.
I worked in facilities. I worked at a furniture dealer, and I worked at a furniture manufacturer, all before going to a design firm. So I get so jazzed about furniture and furniture solutions and how that helps the design and supports the design. And so NeoCon and design days are like my Christmas.
It's your thing.
It's totally my thing. Some of the designers I work with, I'm like, okay, Olivia, we get it. You like it. All right. But
furniture matters. We get it. Move on.
Okay. But I just really get excited about it. So this week in particular is so energizing for me. And then connecting with like-minded people who also feel that connection to those different components that support the full design, right? And then being able to, I love giving tours, especially to students. I'm doing 2 student tours tomorrow, and then I'm also doing the NeoCon Student Summit.
Yeah.
All that connection, getting to do that, getting to speak, getting to, talk about our thought leadership platforms, which I think are so incredibly important.
Yeah.
And then being able to put that all in one week, this is the best week
exciting.
Ever. Yeah.
Well, I feel like your career has blossomed and you've followed your passion, You took the scenic route, but you were like, this matters and I'm going to chase what I love and care about. And I think that's what's so cool about your story.
So it's not for everyone to be like, oh, well, you had to do all that. It's like, yeah, but I feel like I'm a much better designer for it. Because if I didn't have that route, I wouldn't understand all these components that come together. And especially the dealer manufacturer relationship can sometimes get a little convoluted. And so I love running furniture RFPs because I feel I'm like, oh, I was made for this, right?
You were.
I was made for this. And that just alignment and that relationship with everyone, it's just so important. And I wouldn't have had that understanding. And then also having worked for facilities, I also understand from the client's perspective,
day two,
don't give me 100 paints. We got to simplify that. Ways to simplify and just beautify the space in a way that's easy to maintain and makes sense for the client also is so important. And I think it's something that if you haven't worked in facilities, we as designers understand it, we talk about it, but actually having lived it is a much different experience.
I believe it. Well, but we talk about the diversity of thought, diversity of perspective, and I think you can gain that through different career paths that you take. It's not a ladder; it's like a maze sometimes, and it's always fun what you pick up along the way.
And you don't know what you're going to encounter next, right? Something will lead you to something else or connect you to a person that you just did it. You're like, oh, wow. And then that ends up being a pivotal time in your career.
Sure.
And then, the design industry is so small, like we were talking about earlier. So everything kind of comes back together.
It does.
Yeah.
What a beautiful message. Well, it's about people. I think you've had a fantastic journey, and I'm so excited to see all that you're going to do ahead.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.